Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. On today's episode, we talk about 5 reasons that you should not consider buying Storm Collectibles and 5 reasons that you should. So before we get into the countdown, there are a few things that I want to mention. The very first being that I will not be reshooting or doing edits. So I'm going to shoot this video straight through, so expect some mistakes. Secondly, I want to mention that I am a big fan of the Storm Collectibles properties and their action figures. I say this as to mention that what may come across as possibly negative is simply my honest opinion about these figures, and I am certainly rooting for the success of the company because I am very happy with the offering that we receive. So without further ado, 5 reasons why you should not consider buying Storm Collectibles. Coming in at number 5 would be it's only one type of license. So for those of us who collect Storm Collectibles action figures in 1/12 scale, it is no surprise that their characters are based off of video game characters. For example, you look at Street Fighter, Tekken, Injustice, King of Fighters, Gears of War, Golden Axe, and the list goes on. Every 1/12 character that we have so far is based off of some sort of video game franchise. So while that is true, I would say it is not entirely true. I'll point at 3 characters in particular: Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, and Hulk Hogan. All 3 characters that Storm Collectibles produce, all 3 characters that are based off of actual people. Now, to where this may be a little skewed is that all 3 of those characters have their own individual video game. So this still sticks true to Storm Collectible at the moment, only being able to touch video game licenses. Originally, I thought this was a huge challenge, as I start to think that there are many characters that I would like to see that I may never get to see because of this limitation, especially across the anime genre. But as I start to dive deep into it, I've noticed that many popular animes such as Dragon Ball, My Hero Academia, Hunter x Hunter, they all have video games. So this stands to reason that if Storm Collectible is able to go after these video game licenses, hey, maybe we may have an All Might or Goku or Luffy. And I am very happy at the idea of that. Now, to where Storm Collectibles may lose some fans, at the moment, they haven't been able to go after licenses such as movie-based figures. So whether that's from the DCU, the MCU, it doesn't appear that we're going to get those characters maybe anytime soon. And the same can be said for TV series. Now, personally, I am not the biggest fan of the MCU designs. I am more traditional to the comics, which brings another challenge. And this is one to where I can agree with, and one that I'll actually feel is that they're unable to go after characters based on their comic likeness. And that sucks. Because I'm thinking if Storm Collectibles was able to dive into other areas, whether TV, movies, comics, they would be a dominant force in the 1/12 scale action figure game. Can you imagine a Wolverine done by Storm Collectibles or an Incredible Hulk? What about Spawn or Brawly? When it comes to large action figures, Storm Collectibles absolutely kills it. So here's to wishful thinking. And this is why this is number 5 on my list. Coming in at number 4 is scale, and I assure you that scaling is an issue. So, where to start with this? Let's go with Cole from Gears of War. Essentially, when I had this character, I felt that he was way too small. In my opinion, the Gears of War characters in a video game seem to be much larger than most other figures. So when I had him in hand, I felt that he was relatively small. However, being compared with a Chun-Li, for example, you can see that Coltrane is a bit bigger. Bringing in Mike Tyson for scale, looking at a 2 male base figures, he seems to scale pretty well with Mike. Like, I think that if you've seen these two figures, you can say, hey, they're from the same universe. Essentially, the proportions are pretty similar when you look at the arm size. The feet, I don't think, are exceptionally different. Mike is wearing boxing shoes, which are more fitted, and he's wearing some armor type of boots. Now bringing in Ermac from Mortal Kombat, you can see that he's actually smaller than Mike Tyson. He is long, or even smaller than Chun-Li. So compared to that, Coltrane is bigger than all of these characters. Let me slide them to the side for a moment. Now focusing on Tekken. They are closer in height, but now if you look at the size of their heads, it is vastly different. If you look at the size of the arms, not that big of a difference, but if you look at the hands are. Right? And for a moment, I just want to put Coltrane to the side, because I think when sometimes people think of characters being out of scale, they usually look at height, but it is so much more than height. So just look at the proportions. Look at how wide this torso is versus this one. This is providing the illusion because of that piece. But if you turn him to the side and look at the arms, the forearms, the hands, the head, the feet, and if you look, Heihachi is barefoot, but his feet are enormous. I mean, it is way out of scale. Now you bring in Terry Bogard, which I thought was a bit tall, and you compare him to this Tekken-based figure. They are close to the same height, but again, you look at the thickness of the legs versus the slender of these legs, the width of the feet versus how small these feet are, and he has shoes on. So moving him to the side, let's bring Omega Rugal, who I thought was an enormous character. And it's hard to believe that these two characters are really from the same universe. Again, the slender legs, just much wider. The feet are more proportioned. But then I realized that he is not so big scaled against Sagat. Sagat is a huge figure. I think with Street Fighter, Sagat is what, either 6'9" or 7'1", if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me, as I'm pretty sure you will. But these two characters do not look like they're from the same universe. You wouldn't think Omega Rugal was the size that he is compared to how big Sagat is. And now, perhaps the biggest figure from Storm Collectibles, their Bane from Injustice. And he is just enormous. Let's just lift the camera just a little bit. I just hate the size of his head. And this is not on Storm Collectibles. This is accurate to how he looks in the game. But this figure is just, in my opinion, way out of proportion to these other characters. It just doesn't scale right. So if you're looking to have a perfect lineup of all of these characters, it is not going to work. But if you're able to mix and get them in certain poses, then maybe that will work. So coming in at number 3 is the amount of time that you have to wait for figures. So Storm Collectibles is notorious for showing prototypes, and either those prototypes completely disappearing or you having to wait years before you see them. For example, with Mortal Kombat, we've seen a number of the female ninjas, Katana and so on. We saw versions of Chun-Li, wrong fighting game. We saw versions of Liu Kang, as well as the maskless version of Sub-Zero. Some of those figures have been shown 2 years ago. However, we still do not see those figures in either a pre-order. They seem to just have disappeared. Storm Collectibles has also teased licenses that we haven't seen figures for as well, such as Darkstalkers. Like, when are we finally going to see a Darkstalker character in prototype form? Finally, after all of this time, we were able to see a version of Hamaru, I believe, from Samurai Showdown. The problem with the wait is that these lines are extensive. There are a lot of characters in Street Fighter. There are a lot of characters in Mortal Kombat. There are a lot of characters in King of Fighters. And if Storm Collectible is going to continue to produce these characters at the pace that they are producing them, it's going to be a long, long wait. Coming in at number 2 is the price. Essentially, when Storm Collectibles first came on the scene, their ninjas were selling for $55. That price has drastically increased to a price of $75 for the ninjas. That is close to a 40% increase in price. And now if you look at their larger figures, such as Bane, those figures are priced at $100 or over $100. Dark Side, over $100. Lobo, over $100. So the price on these figures is drastically increasing. And the number one reason why you should not consider buying Storm Collectibles is the time that it will take for you to continue or complete your collection. Storm Collectibles has amassed a major lineup of characters, which is fantastic for the collector. But let's just focus on Street Fighter for a moment. Currently, we have Ken and Ryu, Akuma, Sagat, Bison, Chun-Li, Gao, Alex, Cammy, and I think that's it. Assuming that I am correct, let's just focus on Street Fighter 2. We're still missing Dazlim, E Honda, Vega, Barlog, Blanca. I think that's it for the Street Fighter 2 lineup. So there are many characters that are still missing. Characters we have not even seen prototypes for, even unpainted prototypes. So who knows how many years it's going to take before we can even complete the roster for Street Fighter 2, not considering the other Street Fighter games. You add that to, there are other lineups, Injustice, Tekken, which we only have 2 characters for, Mortal Kombat. Aside from the ninjas, we have Shao Kahn, Goro, Baraka, and I think that's it. There has to be over 20 Mortal Kombat characters that are missing. And now Gears of War, who knows how far they plan to go with this lineup? Do they plan to give us all the different type of species of locusts? Because if that's the case, there are going to be a lot of characters to come. And then King of Fighters 98, there are at least 16 characters, if I'm not mistaken, in that game. So moving on to 5 reasons why you should consider buying Storm Collectibles. Starting out at number 5, the time between purchases. This is a lineup to where you probably will not go broke. You think about Marvel Legends. For those of you who collect Marvel Legends, Hasbro pumps out numerous waves of Legends every single year. Sometimes you have 7 to 6 characters dropping in the same month from different lineups. So that can be up to 14 characters being released in the same month. Hasbro is a ultimate factory pumping out many characters, to where Storm Collectibles, if you are a collector that's really collecting from 1 or 2 lineups, you're going to have a lot of time in between purchases to be able to grab a figure, to be able to recoup some money, and then to come back to buy something else that releases, as they typically do not release a lot of figures every year. You look at the Tekken lineup, for example, we only have 2 characters from Tekken. You take a look into their boxing series, we only have Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. And you take a look into their wrestling line, we only have Hulk Hogan. So coming in at number 4, I would say the quality. The figures feel sturdy. They have heft and weight to them. They do not feel brittle or as if they're going to break if you put them into a pose. The figures appear to be quality made. And I guess for the price point, it would make sense. So these are not figures that you have to worry about the legs or the arms falling off, or figures that you have to worry about, sorry Hasbro, to where like the weak legs just being like this gelatin mold that just bends and comes out unshaped once set into the package. Coming in at number 3 would be innovation. Storm Collectibles, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not better, than Mezco. I think Mezco is the other innovator of the game, to where they have really put their thought process into making accessories that are just fantastic and really complement the figures. Storm Collectibles has done a great job with their Mortal Kombat figures, with some of the accessories for Raiden, accessories for Sub-Zero. Ermac also has some pretty good accessories with him. I also like the 4-piece set that builds the, not sure what it's called, but the effect for Omega Rugal that comes with the 4 King of Fighter characters that we currently have. So kudos for Storm Collectibles for thinking outside of the box and providing a great accessories to complement their action figures. Moving in at number 2 would be the properties. What other action figure company has given us DC Injustice to be able to pair with our Street Fighter figures, to be able to pair our Street Fighter figures with Mortal Kombat, to match Mortal Kombat figures with our King of Fighters? I think a lot of collectors who are buying across the line for Storm Collectibles, like having Ken and Terry Bogard, that is such a great combination. To be able to put your Ryu figure with Heihachi, like those are things that it just didn't seem like we were going to get in action figure form, as a lot of companies have tackled some of these lineups, but usually they leave before completing like the franchise or the lineup. So here's to hoping that Storm Collectible is able to continue to pump out all of these characters for the wave, so that we can be able to pair and put together some of our most iconic battles. And the number one reason to buy Storm Collectibles is that no one else is doing it. If you look at SH Figuarts, for example, that has a Street Fighter line, SH Figuarts, in my opinion, is not committed to the Street Fighter line. So I really don't see it going on. There is a chance, and I'm not a betting man, but if I had to bet, I would say that you will not receive all of the characters for Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 5, whichever one they are focusing on. NECA, at some point, tackled the Mortal Kombat. McFarlane is currently tackling Mortal Kombat. NECA is no longer doing the line, and I am not sure how far McFarlane will go with it. But even if McFarlane decides to continue and produce all the characters from Mortal Kombat 10 or 11, I forget which one they're actually working on, they're not doing Street Fighter. They're not doing Tekken. They're not doing Gears of War. So Storm Collectibles is the only company right now that will allow you to pair all of these characters together. So this is the conclusion of my list. I plan to do more videos such as this. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you during the next video.